But tonight I'm going to talk to you about the Banshee. Some of you know the name Banshee. Some know it well, some know it vaguely. Pictures come to mind of an old lady combing her hair and crying, or keening as it's known. The phenomenon of the Banshee is ancient and it's primal in respect of Ireland. And it can attach itself, this phenomenon, this primal ancient phenomenon can attach itself to families over the generations and generations, and indeed, in some cases, follow them right across the sea. So what is the Banshee? Well, let me tell you my mother's story. First of all, the music stopped. That's got to be a sign. The Banshee is watching us. Maybe we'll put some more music on? We'll have some more music. Okay. So next time it stops, we leave it like that, okay? Because it's freaking me out. I digress. My mother got to know a young girl who had arrived over from County Galway to the sanatorium, to Piedmont Sanatorium, which I think was established in 1912. I think it still exists, although I don't know what its purpose is now. But it was this big, vast complex. And this girl had come across all the way from the rugged coast of the west of Ireland, County Galway, to be here in County Kildare. She too was suffering from tuberculosis. And they got to know each other. We'll call her Nancy, all right? She got to know Nancy well, and that was her girlhood friend. But Nancy was ailing and failing and fading away. She wasn't well at all. Her tuberculosis was quite advanced. And one day my mother said to her, "Nancy, are you all right?" And Nancy said to her, "No, Emily, I'm not. And I'll tell you something. It won't be long until the Banshee comes for me." Now, my mother probably didn't even know what a Banshee was, and didn't even register what was going to happen. And a week or two passed, and they shared a little room together with kind of like little bunk beds and beds on either side, whatever the setup was. And in the morning, in the very early, late at night, early morning, Nancy was over her side of the room, and my mother awoke to a ferocious noise which was emanating right over the bed from where Nancy was still sleeping peacefully. And my mother described the noise. It was an auditory phenomenon. She didn't see any Banshee doing her hair, but she heard this force, this phenomenon which hung over Nancy's bed. She described it. She described it as a mixture of a human in pain and a beast and an animal. This merging of sound which terrified my mother. Her hair was standing on her head, listening to this cacophony across the room, which was like a mixture of caterwauling and, let's call it what it was, keening. The keening, the crying, the release, the catharsism in getting out of the state of grief, of loss. That is the Banshee, the cry of the Banshee. And it hung over Nancy's bed for several minutes. Several minutes. It could have been as much as 10 minutes. I don't know. I wasn't there. It was a long time ago. But my mother stuck to her guns in relating this story to me throughout the years. She might have been a very funny lady, but she wasn't given to exaggeration, because this was, on top of the trauma she was having as being ill, this was a terrible fright that she got. This caterwauling, this keening, this cloying animalistic grief purgative of pain and suffering and loss. That is what the Banshee is, boys and girls. That's what it is. And it's quite a natural phenomenon, although I'm sure if you encountered it, like my late mother did, it would be both terrifying and unnerving and all those things. But eventually, the cacophony rose and flowed and gradually ebbed away by degrees. Nancy still asleep, oblivious to it all. And you can probably guess she wasn't long for this world once the Banshee had paid its visit. A few days afterwards, Nancy died. What did we call it these days? She passed away. And you know, her family was so poor. Let's leave it. Let's leave it in memory of Nancy here. Her father was so poor that he drove across all the way, that's 300 miles or so over from Galway. And there and back he had a coffin on the top of his car, tied down, and that was for Nancy. And he took her back to County Galway in the coffin, strapped to the top of the old banger of a car that he had. And that was the end of lovely Nancy. And that was the end of the Banshee my mother told me about all those years later. Mother, I will remember you. I will remember the love you gave me. And your presence lives on in one of your granddaughters, who's very like you, Mum. But tonight, on Scary Era, I thank you for telling me that story, which stuck with me all those years. She never wavered from it, and I never doubted her, and I never doubted the phenomenon of the Banshee, and neither should you. Mother, I will remember you.